Tonight, the hitman who shot a Russian banker 6 times at point-blank range in the middle of a busy London street. Miraculously, his target survived and has spoken exclusively to Crimewatch. Plus, the investigation into a string of sex attacks in Gloucestershire. And how the Met's flying squad snared a notorious armed gang dubbed the SAS Robbers. Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. I'm standing in for Kirsty. We're live with dozens of detectives all here so you can help them crack cases. We're going to have some more on that unbelievable assassination attempt in just a moment. First, though, a rundown of what else we have for you tonight. Officers from Gloucestershire are here hoping you can name who's behind a series of sex attacks over recent months.
The fact he's still out there worries me because he potentially going to do it again to other young girls who, like me, don't deserve it.
Strathclyde police are hunting the murderer of shopkeeper and father of 3, Javid Ali. He was attacked on a Friday afternoon in Paisley last month.
He'd been basically stabbed in the shop, and the level of blood loss was absolutely shocking. My mum's lost her husband, my youngest brother. He's only 10 years old and he's lost his father.
Former policeman Martin Bayfield is back with more wanted faces and crimes caught on camera.
Yes, we've got people wanted for GBH, rape and armed robbery, and some shocking CCTV, including this woman being mugged and dragged down the stairs of a London train station.
And Matthew has the fascinating story of how police caught a prolific gang of armed robbers.
Yes, this notorious gang and their ringleader, dubbed Mr. Meticulous by police, were convinced they were untouchable until the Met's flying squad finally caught them red-handed.
It's a great feeling. Mr. Meticulous, we've arrested him, and he's now serving 20 years imprisonment. Nothing speaks louder than that.
Also tonight, fears that a stolen Henry Moore sundial sculpture could be sold on for scrap. Can you help track it down before it's melted down? Well, our first case tonight is like something from a Bond film, except it really happened and a man very nearly lost his life. 45-year-old German Gorbunsov, an exiled Russian banker, had just arrived home to his block of flats in London's Docklands one night in March when an armed assassin sprang from the shadows. Incredibly, what happened next was caught on camera, and tonight, for the first time, we can show those unprecedented CCTV images of a hitman attempting murder on a busy London street.
Police emergency services as now.
Yes. Hello, ma'am. Somebody is being shot. Somebody's being shot.
One evening in March, this street in London's Docklands became the scene of a crime you might think only existed in spy thrillers and Hollywood movies, because hidden among commuters making their way home was an assassin carrying a 9mm pistol fitted with a silencer. His target, a high-profile Russian banker, and what followed had all the hallmarks of a professional hit.
Just before 7 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th of March, German Gorbunsov, a 45-year-old Russian banker, finished work for the day at his plush offices in the city's Bishopsgate. A well-known and security-conscious billionaire, German would always hail a taxi off the street rather than pre-arranged travel.
Being street, please.
His journey home to his rented flat on the Isle of Dogs took around 30 minutes. He spent most of that time chatting to a friend on the phone in Russian. He was dropped off at the corner of Byng Street at 7:20. His apartment was 100 yards away, and his short walk was caught on CCTV. What happens next is truly horrifying. Without warning, Gurman is shot in the back twice at close range. But the gunman is far from finished. While Gurman is disabled on the hallway floor, the gunman shoots him another 4 times in the stomach. Within seconds, he flees, leaving Gurman for dead.
Bleeding badly from 6 gunshot wounds, Gurman was rushed to hospital where he fell into a coma. But miraculously, he did survive. And 3 months on, he's now out of the coma and slowly recovering at a secret location, guarded round the clock by armed police.
Ну, 6 пуль во мне нашли.
They found 6 bullets inside me.
Мне сильно повредили внутренние органы.
I was badly injured and badly affected.
Я до сих пор не вижу в врачах уверенности.
I have serious internal damage to my body, and I still haven't seen a single doctor who's absolutely convinced it will be fine.
Ну, буду ли я инвалидом, да?
I will make it, but I will be disabled.
Все это надолго.
My future is uncertain.
Когда все это происходило, я разговаривал по
The moment I was shot, I was on the phone,
Мне надо было заставить
and I needed to get the person I was speaking to start doing something.
скорую вызывать
Call the police, call the ambulance.
Я мало думал о себе.
So at that moment, I was hardly thinking of myself. I was just thinking, get the police, get the ambulance, and we needed to do it as soon as possible.
Thinking he'd finished Gurman off, the gunman quickly fled the scene. And although he got away, he left a trail of significant clues.
At around the time of the shooting, witnesses reported seeing a hooded man fitting the description of the assassin on Manila Street, directly behind the apartment block. CCTV images capture him opposite the North Pole pub. He then appears to dive into some bushes at the end of the street. Police searches of the bushes uncovered a hooded top, a bag, and crucially, the gun used in the attack.
So, Russell, this is where the gunman dumped his stuff, isn't it?
That's right. We're seen to go into these bushes where he's dumped off the pistol with a silencer, a hooded top and a bag with a pair of gloves in it. Having gone in here, we do not know where he's gone from this point.
And the gun itself was incredibly rare.
That's right. It was a 9mm Makarov pistol. But it's vital that we have any information possible about that.
Tell me about the cab journey that Gurman took, because that's really important, isn't it?
That's right. It's essential that we trace the cab and the driver. Gurman was talking in Russian on the phone throughout the whole journey. It was a new-style black cab with Zupa advertising down the side.
I mean, it was an incredible attack. It was just so brazen.
It was clearly a targeted attack, and whilst this may seem like it was something out of a movie, this was real-life crime with a real-life victim and life-changing consequences for him.
Я же с этого начал, что
More than anything in the world, I want to see these people in court.
на улицах Великобритании.
Of course, these people should be taken off the streets of Britain. The worst feeling is that guy shot me and ran away, and probably very much hoped he had killed me. This incident has changed my whole life.
Horrific case. You saw DCI Russell Taylor of the Met's Homicide and Serious Crime Command in that film. He's leading the investigation. He's with us now. Russell, in the film you're saying it was a meticulously planned attack, and yet the attacker left items at the scene, one of which was this gun which we have here. Tell us a little bit more about it.
That's right, this gun was found dumped in the undergrowth, as you've seen. It's a Makarov 9mm pistol which had a silencer attached to it. We're very interested in this gun. It's very rarely seen in the UK, only on 2 or 3 occasions, and we want as much information as we can as to where it could have come from.
Now, the other thing he left was this cardigan.
That's right, the other thing was this Joe Goy hooded cardigan. Distinctive blue piping down the side and a distinctive logo on the left arm. Again, these are quite rare garments in the UK, and obviously we're keen to identify where it could have come from.
Now, you've got some more CCTV, so tell us what you have.
That's right. We have some CCTV from the day before the shooting on the 19th, where a male seen walking in the same direction as it was on the 20th in Manila Street, wearing a top identical to this. We really need to identify who this man is. We need to speak to him.
Right, and you'd also like to speak to a man who was seen walking away from Canary Wharf. That's also in the CCTV, isn't
That's
it?
right. On the day of the shooting, on the 20th, we have CCTV of a male making his way from Canary Wharf towards the area of Byng Street, carrying a bag similar to the bag that was recovered with the gun. He's seen then on the same CCTV after the shooting making his way back into the tube station, but this time he doesn't have the bag. This may be a completely innocent man, but we really need to identify and talk to him.
Now, unusually in this case, you do have quite a lot of evidence. What more do you have?
Well, we have a full DNA profile which we've been able to get from the exhibits that we've recovered, so we can easily eliminate people should their names be put forward.
And it's important to say, if people are ringing you, you and your team are here tonight. You've got Russian speakers, haven't
We have,
you?
back at the incident room, we have some Russian-speaking officers that are there to assist.
All right, Russell, thanks very much. We'll speak to you a little bit later. Truly unbelievable case, that. If you're in the area that night or you recognise the men who were caught on CCTV, please do call Russell and his team in the studio now. 0500 600 600. Now, Martin has the first of tonight's Wanted Faces. Martin.
And before we start, just take a look at last month's faces on the website. Thanks to your calls, half of them have already been picked up. Let's see if we can better that tonight, starting with Matthew Sharp. Now, he absconded from Leyhill Prison last month. The 25-year-old was serving a sentence for GBH after he severely injured an off-duty police officer in an attack in 2007. Sharp, who's originally from Bromsgrove in Worcestershire, has links to Plymouth and has his surname, spelled S-H-A-R-P, tattooed on his right arm. Next is David William O'Regan. Detectives want to speak to the 30-year-old in connection with a burglary at a jeweller's shop at the Bluewater Shopping Centre in June 2011, during which jewellery and watches worth more than £50,000 was stolen. O'Regan is believed to be living in North London. Number 3 is Anne Maureen Taverner. Police want to trace her in connection with a conspiracy to supply heroin and crack cocaine in Brighton during the summer of 2010. The 42-year-old, who uses the street name Mama, has links to Sussex, Nottingham and Worcester. Now, lastly, for now, is Anthony Clark. Police from all over the country want to speak to him about a variety of fraud offences totalling tens of thousands of pounds. The 38-year-old has links to West Yorkshire, London, Cumbria, Ireland and the Far East. Now, all of tonight's faces are on the website. If you know where they are, please call 0500 600 600, or you can text 63399. Type crime, leave a space and then your message.
Now, Strathclyde police are searching for those who killed father of 3 Javed Ali at a shop in Paisley just outside Glasgow. It happened just over a month ago, and as you'd expect, his grieving family is struggling to come to terms with their loss.
My father was the one who would just, if I had an issue or a problem, he would just make things okay. I've lost that. My mum's lost her husband. My youngest brother, he's only 10 years old and he's lost his father.
48-year-old shopkeeper Javed Ali was a popular figure in his community, running the Sunshine Grocers on Green Road in Paisley.
He was a happy-go-lucky kind of guy, just share a joke with people, really cared about his family, you know, my mother and, you know, myself and my brothers, just worked exceptionally hard his whole life.
On Friday the 15th of June, Javed had gone to work as normal, but at around 5 p.m. he dialed 999 to say he'd been attacked. Javed had been working alone at the time, and his family had no idea how seriously he'd been injured until they got to hospital.
Came in and told us that he'd been basically stabbed in the shop, and the level of blood loss was absolutely shocking, and they were doing an operation at the moment to heal the wound, but they didn't know if he would survive the operation or not. And so my mum just broke down there and then. I just went to reassure her to say, you know, Mum, it's going to be okay. As soon as I opened my mouth, I couldn't help but I just burst out into tears as well. You know, it was probably the most horrific moment I've ever had in my life.
Javid managed to hold on for a further 2 weeks, but on the 29th of June, his wife and 3 sons made the agonizing decision to switch off his life support. His family now needs answers. Who did this and why?
My father just went out to, provide for his family, to work. He was not harming anyone. And if someone's come in to do, be it maybe a deliberate attempt to end his life or maybe an attempted robbery that's gone wrong, but I really want them to be caught for the sake of my family, so that we can begin to maybe move on.
Well, I'm joined now by Detective Chief Inspector Duncan Sloan of Strathclyde Police. And Duncan, it is unbelievable this could happen in broad daylight. Somebody must have seen something.
Yes, Javid's shop really was the hub of the community. Javid was a hard-working man. He worked 7 days a week providing for his family. That day, Friday the 15th of June, that area around 5 o'clock would have been busy with people in the shop and the surrounding area. And that's why it's important. I would urge anyone, for the sake of Javid's family, do the right thing, get in touch.
And there were a number of possible escape routes for the attacker, weren't there?
Yeah, that's correct. The attacker could have made off on Green Road in either direction. It could also have crossed the road to nearby Cardell Road, or indeed there was a third option and route, which is a cycle path at the rear of the shop. That's accessed via a grassy area. And in one direction, the cycle path would lead you to Fulbar Road, and in the other direction to Lounsdale Road.
And we're seeing that cycle path now. Now, this is important because you're trying to trace specific witnesses. Tell me about those.
Indeed, in particular, I know there was a till transaction that occurred just after 5 p.m. and shortly before the attack. That was for the amount of 35 pence. If you recognise that amount in that transaction, you may have vital information that could assist me in my inquiry. Secondly, I'm also interested in tracing a male who was seen running from the area of the cycle path towards Lounsdale Road and the Lord Lounsdale pub. Now, that's an area of about a quarter of a mile away from the scene. That male was described as white, about 20 years of age. He was 6 foot tall, slim build and wearing a grey jogging suit. Also, I'm anxious to trace a third individual who's a female who was seen near to the shop just shortly after the attack. That female was described as white. She had dark hair in a ponytail and was carrying Aldi's shopping bags.
And it's worth saying there is a big reward on this one.
Indeed, there is a Crime Stoppers reward. They've teamed up along with the Association of the Convenience Stores, and they're offering a £50,000 award for information that will lead to the arrest and conviction of someone.
Duncan, good luck. Thanks very much. Well, you saw the awful impact Javid's murder has had on his family. I urge you to call now if you can help in any way. It's the usual number for the studio, 0500 600 600, or you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously. They're on 0800 555 111. Martin.
Right, we've got lots of criminals caught in the act now in tonight's first batch of CCTV, beginning with that phone mugging in South London. Brixton Railway Station in London on a Thursday evening in April. A woman on her phone walks up the station steps. As she does, a man in a distinctive check top and hoodie passes her and makes a grab for her phone. She struggles with him, but he's determined, forcing her to the floor and then dragging her down the steps before running off with the phone. This man violently attacked a lone female. Tell us who he is. Inside the Museum of East Asian Arts in Bath on a Tuesday morning, also in April. 3 men wearing high visibility jackets burst in. They may look bright, but they're far from it. The gang manhandle a member of staff, with one of them bundling him into another part of the museum and forcing him to the floor. But they leave the victim alone long enough for him to lock himself in. Nice one. Police think the gang travelled from Liverpool and are sure they were after the museum's collection of rare antique Chinese jade, but they left empty-handed after setting off the fire alarm. Name these bungling burglars tonight. Lots more CCTV still to come, and it's all online if you need another look. Call 0500 600 600 if you can help, or text on 63399. Type crime, leave a space, and then your message.
Martin, thank you. Now, 3 years ago, we asked for your help to catch the killers of 20-year-old Adam Chadwick. He was shot at close range in the head by 3 masked strangers in Leeds. Police still believe someone out there knows who murdered him, and they're appealing tonight for those people to come forward. Adam spent the evening of the 24th of June 2008 at the house his sister shared with her boyfriend in Hare Hills in Leeds.
Yeah, Dad, I'm trying to what to tell you. Yo, this is...
Put that on, click on that.
At around 9:30 p.m, a woman knocked on the door asking for someone called Michelle.
Oh, don't...
Is Michelle in?
I don't like it.
Who was that?
Oh, just some girl looking for someone called Michelle.
Click on that.
Then at around 10:30 p.m, the same woman came back again. But this time, her visit would end in tragedy.
Is Michelle in?
No, I've already told you she doesn't live here.
Adam! Michelle! What's going on? Just call Michelle.
Adam died the next day, leaving his 3-year-old daughter Ruby without a father. Understandably, his parents were left devastated.
If I ever met the people who did it, I just want to know why. And I just need a reason.
I do miss him so much, and I think it's hard because we've got Ruby, and I just think these people, they haven't just took Adam, they took Ruby's daddy, and that's what really hurts.
Police in West Yorkshire have never given up hope of bringing Adam's killers to justice. And in the last few weeks, they've released new CCTV, which they hope could bring them fresh leads in the case. The new footage shows 3 men stealing the car, which was later used as a getaway vehicle by the gang. It was a Ford Focus C-Max, registration YH54SBV. A second clip shows 3 men walking away down Shoalbrook Avenue in Leeds, near to where that car was found, dumped shortly after the shooting. Detectives also still need to trace this person. She's the woman who knocked on the door twice that evening, asking for Michelle. And of course, police crucially need names for the 3 balaclava-clad men who tried to force their way into the house that night. One of whom was responsible for that fatal gunshot, which killed Adam. Adam's daughter Ruby is now 7 years old. She has been without her father for more than 4 years. Please, if you know who did this, do the right thing and name Adam's killers tonight. Call the studio here, the number 0500 600 600, or you can speak to Crime Stoppers. You can do that anonymously. Here's the number, 0800 555 111. OK, still to come tonight, the urgent investigation to uncover who's attacked several women over 6 months in a small area of Gloucestershire.
It was just terrifying. Not knowing who it was and why. Why me?
And we reveal how the Met's flying squad brought down a notoriously slick gang of armed robbers who had terrorised building societies across the east of England.
They were strategically aware criminals who planned an armed robbery, almost like perhaps the police would plan a policing operation.
And also tonight, the hunt for the rare Henry Moore sculpture worth £500,000 stolen from the grounds of his former home. But first, Matthew has the latest on what's happening on the phones. Matthew.
Yes, let's briefly interrupt Russell, who's hunting that hitman who tried to kill a Russian businessman. Russell, what's come in so far?
We've had a couple of interesting calls giving us a couple of names. One of them links to Chechnya. We're working on those names now to see if we can find anything out. So that's very positive. However, what I'm really interested in is trying to identify the male seen in the CCTV from the 19th, the day before the attack. It's key that we identify this individual wearing a top identical to the one that we recovered uncovered. We need his name. We need to know who he is.
The other bit of CCTV we showed from the tube station, have you had anything on that?
At this point, no, we haven't had that. And again, this is critical that we identify this individual. Seen making his way to the scene with a bag, making his way back after the shooting without a bag. We really need to know who this man is. This was a terrible crime with tragic consequences for the victim. We really need to identify these people and speak to them.
Yes, and that person could be completely innocent, but you need to rule him out. The gun, the taxi driver you were trying to get hold of, anything on those?
Again, not at the moment. We are very keen to identify this Zoopla taxi cab and the driver. And as I said before, the firearm, very unusual in this country. Anybody with any information around the origins of that, we would really like to hear from them.
OK, Russell, I'm going to let you get back to the calls. Thanks very much for that. Sian.
Thanks, Matthew. In May this year, a young woman was raped as she walked through Gloucester. It was the third in a string of similar attacks over 6 months. Brutal assaults, which police now fear could be linked.
This is the old Coney Hill Hospital site on the outskirts of Gloucester. Its grounds are now a public park, and it's where, in May of this year, a young woman was raped as she made her way home from a friend's house.
On that day, I met up with a friend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you are. Oh, come on, let's go. Oh, let's go.
We spent the evening at our house just watching telly, cosy night in, having a nice girly chat.
Do you?
To me, it was the perfect night. Just chatting away. And I'd left her as happy as I could be.
Do you know what? I'm gonna have to make a move.
All right then. I want you part way.
She left just after 11 p.m.
Me and my friend tend to walk each other home, just to try and be a bit on the safer side.
They went as far as the clock tower together.
Right, I'll leave you here then.
Cool. Oh. See you.
See ya.
Bye.
I left my friend and carried on walking across the road area. I had my hood up because I thought it was going to rain. I didn't think there was anybody around. I thought I was on my own, couldn't hear, see, anything.
She was grabbed around the throat with both hands and punched in the face. She was then raped and eventually blacked out. It was a ferocious and prolonged attack, and most worryingly of all, it may not be the first time this rapist has struck. In January, a girl was crossing the footbridge over the A40 at Penrose Road.
On the night of the attack, I was going home my normal route. I got to the beginning of Innsworth Bridge.
She was dragged under the bridge and sexually assaulted.
Shut up, or I'll stab you.
He punched me twice, and the second time, knocking me unconscious. When I opened my eyes, there was a light shining over me. It was my attacker shining light from my phone. Then he ran off.
And in November last year, another woman was sexually assaulted after she took the wrong bus home.
I got off a different bus that night when I had to cut through the park in the dark. I always get a bit scared when I walk through the park just because it's dark and it's not beautifully lit. It was completely silent when I got there. No noise, there was no other people around.
Do as I say, or I'll stab you.
The feeling that you have that someone has so much power over you, there's nothing you can do to stop what's happening. The fact that you could lie is the worst feeling a person can go through.
Angela, each of these attacks in isolation is disturbing. The fact that they could all be connected makes the situation particularly worrying.
Yes, we've had 3 strikingly similar attacks that have occurred in this area over the last 6 months. And whilst we can't be 100% certain that it is the same person responsible, it is something that we're seriously considering.
And what was it about these attacks which first suggested to you that they could be connected?
All 3 attacks occurred in parklands close to or near to residential areas. And if I show you the geography, the first attack occurred here, which is on the outskirts of Cheltenham. And the third attack occurred here, which is on the outskirts of Gloucester. And the second attack within the middle of the 2. And that is a 30-minute distance between all 3.
And there are similarities within the attacks themselves which support the theory that these attacks could be related.
Yes, we're working closely with a behavioural advisor who's looking at the method of all 3 attacks. All 3 victims were grabbed from behind by a male covering his face. The second 2 victims were both punched to the face, which is particularly violent. We are seeing an escalation in violence, and if this is the same person responsible, then we are concerned that he may strike again.
These 3 young women have been through the most horrific ordeal. If their attackers are one and the same person, he needs to be stopped. Now.
I was shaken up, scared, and I thought he was going to kill me.
Even 7 months after the attack, I still get flashbacks when I'm going to sleep and when it's quiet and there's no one else around. And it does still scare me then.
And I'm always carrying it around with me. It's always in my head. I'm always thinking about it. The fact he's still out there worries me because he potentially going to do it again to other young girls who, like me, don't deserve it.
It was just terrifying, not knowing who it was and why. Why me?
Horrific, brutal attacks. DS Angela Middlewood is from the Gloucestershire Constabulary. You saw her in that film. She's here now. And these are how close these attacks are. You're saying they could be linked, but that's just one theory at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, it is a strong theory, but what I would stress is that if someone has suspicions that someone's responsible for one of the attacks, but not all 3, then please come and talk to us, because in the potential there could be 3 attackers.
Either way, if it's one attacker, if it's more than one attacker, very, very dangerous people out there. And women living in the area will be desperately worried. So what should they do?
What we're advising is that the women of Gloucester to be extra vigilant, to not go out alone on their own in the dark, and to be avoid isolated areas. And what we'd also ask is if anybody has had any similar attacks in this area, then to please come and speak to us.
Now, we saw the attack on the woman in the footbridge. The attacker held the mobile phone to her face so that the light was shining in on her. It was her mobile phone. He then ran off with it. What do we know about the phone?
The phone, we believe, is a Stockholm phone, which this is a replica of that. We have not recovered that phone. What we're keen to find out is where the location of that phone is now. And if anyone has any suspicions about that, someone and they can put the phone with that person, then we'd urge them to contact us.
OK. You've also got some CCTV. We can have a look at that now. Just talk us through what we're looking at.
This CCTV is from the second attack on the 19th of January, and this was minutes after the attack. It's on the opposite side of the bridge over the A40 in Innsworth. We see 2 people, a male and a female, followed by a lone male. Now, these people, we haven't been able to trace them, and they are potential witnesses and may have vital information. They may well have seen the attacker make his escape. So we would urge them to come forward, or if anyone knows who they are, then please get them to contact us.
OK, so you're anxious to trace those potential witnesses we saw on that CCTV. Angela, thank you very much. Angela and her team are going to be here waiting for your call. Whoever is doing this does need to be stopped now. There is a £5,000 reward for information leading to a conviction. If you can help, please do call tonight. 0500 600 600. We should say if you've been a victim of crime, then do call the victim support line. Here's the number: 0845 30 30 900. Martin.
More crooks in action now, starting this time inside a Croydon branch of the sandwich chain Subway. It's the early hours of a Saturday morning last October, and two men are waiting to order. But they're more interested in late-night punching than late-night munching. One of the pair, a tough guy in a navy t-shirt, seems to want to fight, with a cabinet full of cookies. But when the shop security guard asks him to leave, he turns his attention towards him, and it all kicks off. His mate then gets involved, with both men attacking the guard, punching and kicking him. The cookie cabinet goes flying. That just takes the biscuit. After their outburst, the pair calmly leave. Can you name these violent food fighters tonight? Just before Christmas last year, inside a posh antique shop in Helmsley in North Yorkshire, a dapper-looking chap in a natty flat cap comes in and has a look around. He asks the shop owner to show him a diamond ring from one of the cabinets. He then asks for a magnifying glass to have a better look, but as the shopkeeper turns away, he scarpers, taking the £17,000 ring with him. Time to put a cap on his stealing ways, be a gem, and name him tonight. On board the number 72 bus as it stops in Shepherd's Bush Green in London on a Wednesday night in March. A man wearing a rather fetching hat gets on board. He starts arguing with the driver, reaching under the safety screen, trying to grab hold of the cash tray. The driver tries to stop him, which clearly winds the guy up. That screen is there for a reason. But he manages to open the door and confronts the terrified driver before running off. Make this the end of the line for the Prat in the hat. All the CCTV stays online until they're caught. And if you recognise anyone, just call 0500 600 600 or text on 63399.
Yes, we've got lots of calls coming in already. Time now, though, for the latest news on some of our previous appeals. Matthew.
Well, first a case we featured twice on the programme. Detectives wanted help to trace 53-year-old Ang Zhang Du, who they wanted to speak to in connection with the murders of 4 members of the Ding family in Northampton in May of last year. Well, earlier this month, Mr. Du was located and arrested in Tangier in Morocco. The Home Office is now seeking to extradite him back to the UK.
Take a look at this face. Angela Owen was on the wanted board on our last programme, and just 2 hours after we showed her picture, she handed herself in to police. She has subsequently been charged with concealing the birth of a child and for several offences of fraud.
Next, a case we first featured 10 years ago. A teenage couple were walking along a towpath in Salisbury when they were approached by a man who threatened them with a gun and subjected the woman to a serious sexual assault. Well, 2 weeks ago, 57-year-old Keith Henderson from Salisbury was found guilty of a number of offences in relation to the attack and has been sentenced to 12 years in prison. Good news.
And here's a great result in a case we featured almost 15 years ago. A 15-year-old girl was raped after she made her way home from her school Christmas Carol concert in Essex in 1997. Well, the man responsible, 34-year-old John Malt, was traced through the use of what forensic scientists describe as familial DNA after a member of his family gave a sample in an unrelated matter. Last month, Malt of Harlow in Essex was convicted of the rape and was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison. It just goes to show the cases are never closed.
Finally, a word of thanks from our sister programme, the Crimewatch Roadshow, which ran for a month on BBC One in the mornings. Well, as a result of your calls, they've so far had 15 arrests on the cases they've featured. Great stuff. Martin.
More wanted faces now, starting with Hashim Elmi. He was part of an armed gang which robbed a shop in North London in July 2007. During the robbery, the victims were bound and blindfolded, with one knocked unconscious with a bottle. Elmi, who is of Somali origin, has links to Glasgow. Next is Richard Oliver Gray. Detectives want to speak to him in connection with 2 armed robberies, one of which took place at the offices of the West Midlands Air Ambulance Charity in June last year, during which 20 staff were held hostage for half an hour, whilst money, mobile phones and a car was stolen. Gray, who's 30 years old, has links to the West Midlands, in particular Birmingham, Dudley and Smethwick. However, he was last seen in South Wales. Number 7 is James Anthony Welsh. Police want to speak to him about a serious assault on a woman which happened in Liverpool in July last year, during which the victim was punched and choked until she blacked out. 40-year-old Welsh has a girl's name tattooed on his neck. He has links to Bexhill-on-Sea, Eastbourne and Hastings. And finally tonight is John Jumba. He also uses several other names, including Antoine Kelly and Amos John. Detectives want to speak to the 33-year-old in connection with a rape, during which the victim was attacked at knife point. Jumba, who's originally from Nigeria, is in the country illegally and has links across London. Call 0500 600 600 if you recognise any of tonight's faces, or text 63399. Type crime, leave a space and then your message. And of course, they all stay online until they're caught.
Now, when you think of the flying squad, you probably conjure up images of John Thor and co tearing around London in the Sweeney. In reality, there might be fewer car chases, but this elite unit of the Metropolitan Police really does possess specialist firearms and surveillance capabilities, allowing them to take on the most ruthless and dangerous criminals. Matthew now takes up the story of how the flying squad went head-to-head with a prolific gang of armed robbers and ultimately came out on top.
For 5 years, this highly organised gang carried out a series of incredibly violent raids on building societies across London, East Anglia and the South East.
Dubbed the SAS robbers for their precision, planning and commando-inspired outfits, they wrecked targets, stole getaway cars and terrorised cash delivery guards. They netted around £500,000.
Masterminded by Londoner Danny Speed, nicknamed Mr. Meticulous by detectives, he used counter-surveillance tactics to throw the police off his scent.
He was a career criminal who saw himself as a mentor for other would-be robbers. He thought he was untouchable, and for a while, he was.
But the police were determined to stop him and worked tirelessly to stay one step ahead of the gang. Officers from the flying squad and forces across the UK spent 2 years locked in a cat-and-mouse game with the man who thought he was above the law.
Speed never worked. He was a career criminal, involved in burglaries and crime as a young age, and just worked his way up.
What was key with Speed and his associates was their ability to organise themselves. You know, they were strategically aware criminals who planned an armed robbery, almost like perhaps the police would plan a policing operation.
How he picked his target, where he picked it, what time of day it was, escape routes. Very meticulous in how he planned his job. Very selfish person, but very intelligent.
And the gang adopted a distinct uniform.
With them all dressed in black and the black balaclavas, a number of witnesses describe him as sort of SAS look-alike. All dressed the same, all looking the same, so very hard to distinguish between them.
And the planning would start weeks, if not months, in advance of a job. The gang would steal or buy what they describe as throwaway cars, high-powered vehicles perfect for a quick getaway. And Speed would always use cash, each time paying just under £10,000 to avoid attracting too much attention.
Speed's main targets were branches of the nationwide building society. He knew their cash machines were filled late at night, usually on a Monday. And although London was his home patch, he'd worked out that quiet towns in East Anglia and the southeast would make much easier targets.
And in January 2008, Speed and his gang planned their most brazen raid yet on a cash-in transit van delivering to a branch of Nationwide in the sleepy Norfolk town of Holt. Armed with their signature black holdall filled with sledgehammers and axes, they burst into the bank and attacked the terrified security guard.
Quick, quick, come on! Come on, hurry up! Get enough time! Time!
The security guards that they attacked were put in absolute terror. Some were assaulted. Those events will probably live with them for the rest of their lives.
But for Speed, the thrill of getting away with armed robbery was addictive. He didn't even attempt to make a clean getaway. Instead, he checked into a local hotel where he could watch the aftermath unfold.
Because obviously the police are looking for people making off, perhaps back towards cities, back towards London. Of course, they're sitting there right under their nose.
I'll have a beer, please, mate.
But of course, it was all part of the game. I think he was enjoying rubbing the police's nose in it.
But this blatant flaunting of their success was the beginning of Speed's undoing, when a sharp-eyed cleaner gave police their first breakthrough.
One of the maids who was a cleaner at one of the hotels, luckily for us, remembers going into the room that Speed had stayed in, and an auto trader had been left on the table, which was then recovered by police, and Danny Speed's fingerprints was found in that auto trader.
And of course, in that auto trader magazine was marked vehicles and number plates and stuff like that. She also noticed that the bed hadn't been slept in, and the chairs were arranged by the window, almost like a viewing gallery. So it's obviously where Speed and his gang had been watching out the window and watching the police activity.
But it wasn't enough to convict the gang for the Holt job or for any of their robberies. Police needed to catch Speed red-handed, but the longer they waited, the cockier Speed and his crew would become.
For their next raid, the gang decided a costume change was in order, this time donning army gear to blend in the town of Mildenhall in Suffolk, home to a US military airbase. And they weren't just looking for pocket money. On this raid, they stole £47,000.
They were plaguing the county forces with robberies. The only people that could deal with them were the flying squad.
Now, some of you will know these guys already, some of you not, so let's have a good look at these faces.
Danny Speed and his accomplices were put under surveillance in the hope that they'd lead the police to their next target.
From the start, it was a complete nightmare. I'd never encountered anti-surveillance techniques by any team that we'd targeted before. He knew exactly what we were doing. It didn't seem to faze him whatsoever that he thought the police were looking at him.
16 months into the covert operation, officers thought they'd got their breakthrough.
We came across a white van which was parked directly opposite a building society.
Positive ID.
We thought, this is it, we're going to finally get our hands on him.
All units stand by.
The next thing, Speed spotted a surveillance car, got out of their car and confronted both surveillance officers, shouting and swearing at them. To get that close, to then lose it, was devastating.
After such a close shave, the gang went to ground and Speed left the country.
Excuse me, sir, can I see your passport?
But he wasn't away for long.
The gang needed cash flow to fund their expensive lifestyles, and within days they were back, planning their next robbery.
They obviously need money because they're out robbing again. We're back in.
But so far, all covert operations had failed, so the police decided to go one step further and put a listening probe in Danny Speed's car.
What's up?
Listen, I've got some job coming up in the next couple of weeks, if you're interested.
We knew exactly what was the plan, we knew what they were going to do and how they were going to do it.
Quite amazing that a guy of his calibre would just drop his guard.
Now, the flying squad were one step ahead. They knew Speed was planning a raid on a cash machine at a supermarket in Hadley in Suffolk, and they wanted to catch him in the act. But this time, Mr. Meticulous wasn't ahead of the game. In fact, he was running late.
Speed had actually overslept, which is so ironic. And of course, his guard's down there at that point, isn't it? Because he's not looking, he's just in his car and he's going like a bat out of hell to get there. Of course, the other little bit of good luck we get as well, which is remarkable, that the cash-in-transit delivery van was going to be late.
But there was a problem.
That offence should have been committed very early in the morning. Suddenly, your quiet little car park suddenly becoming populated.
This is now your worst scenario. You've got armed police, you've got potential armed robbers, and you've got members of the public all together.
Positive ID on speed.
So the flying squad made a split-second decision to intervene before anyone got hurt.
All units, strike, strike, strike.
Show me your hands! On your knees! Get out of the car!
In his car, officers found imitation guns, tasers and axes. Police now had enough evidence to charge him. The man who thought he was untouchable had come unstuck at last, and his cocky grin was nowhere to be seen.
To finally take out Speed and his other main players, it was a great feeling. Mr. Meticulous, we've arrested him, and he's now serving 20 years imprisonment. Nothing speaks louder than that.
So, Matthew, might have been Mr. Meticulous, but he was outfoxed eventually, wasn't he?
Yeah, Speed modelled himself on the George Clooney character from that Hollywood film Ocean's 11. Cocky, living the high life, constantly outsmarting police. You saw how arrogant he was. There was one occasion when he was stopped by police near Harwich as he was leaving the country, and he actually said to officers, "I know the police are on to me, tell them to stop, they're useless at it." I mean, cocky beyond belief, but they didn't stop, and when they busted this gang, this sort of crime in Norfolk, for example, it fell by 100%. Speed was responsible for all of it. He was that prolific.
And it seemed like a bit of a cat-and-mouse game, really. Is that a classic flying squad tactic?
It's straight out of the Sweeney scrapbook, isn't it? It's what the flying squad is all about and always has been about. It was set up in 1919. They were given 12 detectives, the fastest cars in London, and they were also given a Great Western Railway van, which they would park on the street, and it would have little spy holes cut out in the sides. Surveillance and a rapid response. That's what it's always been about. And over the years, they've investigated some of the highest profile cases there have been. The Great Train Robbery, the Brinks Mat Raid, the Cray Twins, that attempt to steal that massive diamond from the Millennium Dome. And Speed's name now added to the list, and his gang was given a total of 75 years in jail. And for Danny Speed in Whitemore Prison tonight, not quite the way Ocean's 11 ended.
No, not quite. Matthew, thanks very much. Now, let's tell you about a rather unusual case here. Detectives are investigating the theft of a rare bronze sundial. It was crafted by the renowned sculptor Henry Moore and is worth about £500,000. It was taken from the grounds of the Henry Moore Foundation. That's in Hertfordshire. Just over a week ago, we've got Detective Inspector Paul Watts with us. He's leading that investigation for Hertfordshire Constabulary. And David Mitchinson is here as well. He's a consultant to the Foundation. Welcome, gentlemen, to the programme. Paul, tell us first about what you think happened here.
OK, as you can see, the sundial's about 22 inches tall. It was on display in the gardens of the Henry Moore Foundation, and we believe it was stolen sometime between 4:30 p.m. on the 10th of July, Tuesday, and 11 a.m. on the Wednesday.
These are the grounds the Foundation now we're looking at. It's not the first time a Henry Moore sculpture has been stolen, is it?
No, unfortunately, back in 2005, the sculpture of a reclining figure, which is worth about £3 million, was stolen from a yard near to the Foundation. That was actually taken in a low loader in a Hiab and driven away, and as yet has not been recovered.
David, I know this sundial is really important to the Henry Moore Foundation.
Yes.
Just tell us why it's so special.
Well, it's not only a beautiful piece, but it's also unique in Moore's work. It was the only sundial that he made. And it's a very simple form. It's just two crescents connected in the middle. And of course, it has to be seen out of doors. There wouldn't be much point having a sundial that you had inside.
And Henry Moore wanted to show it in a public place. I mean, that was the point of it.
He did very much. He liked seeing his work out of doors. He liked the public to be able to see it. He liked displaying things outside.
When you display things outside, though, there is a risk when it comes to
There's
public
always
art.
a risk, and the risk is increasing. As Paul says, we've already had a theft of a Henry Moore sculpture, and other pieces of outdoor work have disappeared over the last few years.
A Barbara Hepworth.
The Barbara Hepworth at
disappeared, didn't
Dulwich Park, which you can see there, I mean, ripped off its, brutally ripped off its plinth. And that had been there for about 40 years. And I think it would be tragic if this sort of thing continues, because people who have responsibility for outdoor sculpture might be tempted to take them off view because of security reasons.
Now, Paul, we were saying the sundial is worth anything from £250,000 to £500,000. What do you think the thieves would have done with it?
Well, as you said, the value, there's two theories at the moment. One is that it's been stolen for its scrap value, and really it would be worth very little in scrap value, probably no more than £75.
£75 if you melted it down.
And that's all. And obviously the other theory we're working on is that it's been stolen for its value as a piece of art. And obviously what we want to do is we want to get the sundial back.
When you say value as a piece of art, presumably, David, it's going to be very difficult for those thieves to sell it on because it's so recognisable.
It's very recognisable. I mean, all Henry Moore's work is recognisable because it's been so well exhibited and so well catalogued. There are pictures of all his works of art in books online. It'd be very hard indeed.
Yes. There is a reward, isn't there, Paul, for anyone who knows anything about this?
Yes, the Henry Moore Foundation are offering a reward of £25,000, or up to £25,000 for the safe recovery of the item, and obviously leading to convictions.
All right. Thank you both. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, David. If you have any idea where that bronze sundial might be, or, of course, who took it, please call us now on the usual studio number. Here it is, 0500 600 600. Or, of course, you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously, 0800 555 111. Right. Time for a last quick update on what's coming in on the phones. Martin.
Now, you remember that reconstruction we showed you of that potentially linked sex attack in Gloucester? Well, we've had plenty of calls coming in, which detectives are following up as we speak. But what they're desperately after is to be able to identify the 3 people we showed you in that CCTV footage. The 2 people, the couple, and the gentleman on his own. If that's you or you know who it is, please call us. It is vital information. And Adam Chadwick, who was shot in his sister's house, we've got names, potential names for the attackers and for the woman who was calling and asking whether Michelle lived in that house.
Well, that's everything for now. If you need a second look at any of tonight's cases, as usual, they're all online and they will stay there until those responsible are caught. The address bbc.co.uk/crimewatch also has several exclusive web appeals, including the search for a burglar who held an elderly couple hostage for hours in their own bathroom. Well, the phone lines here are going to stay open until midnight tomorrow. We're going to be back again 10:35. That's after the news with the very latest. Thank you so much for tonight's calls. Viewers in Northern Ireland will have to wait until midnight. Until then, from all the team, goodbye.